So we are currently working with AT&T on a micro cell project. It can happen a number of different ways, but one way is the antenna. So you have let's just say a three-phase pole. Okay, so you've got a cross arm and you have a pole, and so the antenna would actually sit on the pole top in that instance, and either a fiber optic or a coax communications cable would come down. Usually it's a small transformer on that pole because you would need power for the communications box. And then there's usually fiber or coax that is the backhaul. So there's additional things that would come down the conduit and be attached. In the circumstance that a pole is too busy, let's just use simple terms, too busy, we could set another pole for that microcell and communications box separately, and then string a secondary wire there to provide the power and the fiber optics and whatever else they need.
Oh, thank you.
So how does it work with all the different wireless providers? I mean, when they're towers, we have a general policy in Vermont of co-location. Don't build a new tower. So what's the policy with all of these different wireless providers if each one wants to put an antenna on one pole?
I can only speak to what we did with AT&T, and we had to file a special contract with the VEC to make it a public document, and so we had to get permission to go ahead and do that actual agreement with them.
So what if Verizon and T-Mobile and some others come along and want to do something on the same pole?
I haven't crossed that bridge yet, so I don't know if I'm able to answer that.
Question. I think you mentioned Vermont Electric Co-op is doing a project with AT&T that involves these small cell antennas being attached on the poles. And is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And what you said there was a special contract filed with us. Were there any other approvals that were required for that?
Vicki Brown from Vermont Electric Co-op. I assume AT&T has gone through the 248N process. I can't, sitting here today, confirm that, but that was my understanding that was the approach. And these are, you can explain what these are for.
I was going to explain this earlier. Part of emergency response, there was a contract at the federal level to bring electronic communications for first responders to all parts of the country, and AT&T was the winning bid for this. And so this particular microcell is in support of bringing cellular communications to first responders. Where the utilities come in is that we are a second tier first responder. So if there is a catastrophic incident within the state of Vermont, our cell phones for our line crews and the various support entities would be able to communicate with first responders, firefighters, police officers, that kind of thing, to get the infrastructure back up. So it's a very focused, I would say, project in the better interest of safety and security for Vermont. And that's where I'll stop as far as that project. It was a very focused scope.
So it's related to
FirstNet.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It is the FirstNet system. That's correct.
So can you tell us what type of small cells are being deployed?
I don't want to speak to that right here, not because I don't want to. I just don't have the spec sheet in front of me.
I was surprised to hear they're being attached to poles. I understood that AT&T was putting up a new series of towers all over
It's
the
both
state.
because of the fiber optic backbone. They're tied together. So areas that they can't get a larger cell antenna, and they are putting out the bigger towers. I think there's about 13 going to be deployed across the state. Don't quote me on that number, but it's around that number. And then where they have to fill in the gaps because of the rugged terrain, they're going with these microcell antennas.
So in terms of public notice, am I right to assume that if you're putting a small cell antenna on a pole outside someone's house, that they're not getting any notice about it?
They do under 248A.
But
What
this
does
was
that-
248N, so
Right.
is there any notice in the
248A
program
is
that you're dealing with?
Can you just repeat the question?
Is there any public notice around these particular small cells being put in front of people's homes on poles, if they are being put on poles in front of people's homes?
All I could say is that we're following all of the VEC regulations as they exist today.
So so you're not answering the you're saying you're not gonna answer the question.
My
can
understanding is AT&T is following the appropriate 248 process with respect to these.
Right.
and
I'm
that
just trying to
we-
find out if there's public
We are
notice.
not personally giving notice to our members